Just when we thought that we've hit rock bottom with this Philadelphia 76ers team, it keeps getting worse. The Sixers have now dropped to 2-12 on the season in the game where we got our first look at the big three of Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George, which lasted all of 6 minutes until Paul George went hobbling off the court. This just brings further questions into what is the outlook for this Sixers season. Have they dug themselves too large of a hole, sitting at last place in the entire NBA, not just the Eastern Conference here, but ultimately coming up short to the Memphis Grizzlies 117-111, a game that was not as close as that score would indicate. The Sixers did put up a fight at the end of this matchup, but ultimately it was too far and too gone at that point. So, Ryan, talk me through it. I'm ready to be fired up about this team. Where's your head at right now?
I gave myself a little bit of a chuckle when Paul George went off the floor hobbling. I was just like, man, only the Sixers. And we talked about it right before we hopped on. This big three has only played 6 minutes together, and now another injury. And it seems like, yeah, it's the same knee injury that Paul George suffered in the preseason. You never want to see a re-injury this early, especially. So you got to be worried that he's going to be missing a couple weeks now, right when you thought you were getting everyone back. And it just seems like this team is never going to be able to click on all cylinders at the same time. Tyrese Maxey, only 5 minutes in the first half, then goes and plays 15 minutes in the second half. Once again, the plan around Joel Embiid, and nothing has worked yet, just in typical Sixers fashion. And it doesn't look like anytime soon we're going to be figuring this out.
Yeah, absolutely frustrating stuff here. And I want to start with getting, I guess, the elephant out of the room here. The only good we really have to take from tonight is that Joel Embiid looked like himself for the first time all season. That third quarter specifically was the first time we saw that version of Joel Embiid, him ultimately finishing tonight with 35 points, 11 rebounds, shot 10 of 21 from the field. That's about it as far as positive goes. Jared McCain continued to look good, but I'm worried about the bad today. Paul George. We'll start with the injury as a whole. It was kind of a weird play where he came down, got a rebound. You couldn't even really see anything from it, but he immediately called for a substitution there. As we know from the Shams injury report, that it is a left knee hyperextension, the same knee that he battled back from, as you mentioned there. But we have nothing to go off at this point. My gut says it's at least a couple weeks until we see this guy. And by the way, when he was on the floor, it didn't look pretty tonight. Finished with 2 points in tonight's game that he ultimately left with. Did not see any level of aggression from him. Some really frustrating stuff from Paul George. And it's going to take time for this to work together, man. And they just don't have very much more to go through. And taking all that away, I don't want it to get lost how embarrassing this specific loss is. Let's take a look at this Grizzlies injury report today. Cam Spencer did play, was questionable. No John Conchar, no Marcus Smart, no Zach Edey, no Gigi Jackson, no John Morant, and no Vince Williams. This was the hospital Grizzlies, and the Sixers looked like they didn't have a chance for just about any of it. Now, as far as the Nick Nurse conversations, like, we mentioned the big three. He closed the first quarter without any of them on the floor. There is no reason, and now we can't even have this conversation because it's not an option at this point. But there's no reason when you have these basically 4 stars, and I'm kind of throwing Jared McCain in the conversation here, with Tyrese Maxey, with Paul George, with Joel Embiid, with Jared McCain, there is no reason why there should not be 2 of them on the floor at all times. And to close the first quarter without any of them, I don't know what's going on here. And whatever this team meeting behind closed doors was, certainly did not seem to change things. Yes, there were a couple splashes where you saw the increased intensity. Defensively, I thought overall they were better tonight. But guess what? You lost to a team you had no business losing to, so everyone's got to wear that one. So I'm mad at just about everyone right now.
Yeah, and you fall to 2-12, and we were talking about it in yesterday's episode that you're in just a race just to get back to 500 now, and it feels like that's going to be kind of the battle you're fighting the entire year. And when you're talking 500 record, you're talking playing game most likely, and maybe not even one of the teams hosting one of the playing games. That's how bad this start to the season was, and we labeled it out yesterday as well, where there's a 5 game stretch coming up. It was today, starting at the Grizzlies, and then a
This was
four
one
game
of
home.
them, yeah.
Yeah, this was a 4 game homestand coming up now in a row. And we said, you know what, get 4 out of 5 there. You can start to build some positive momentum. Hopefully, fingers crossed, everyone stays healthy. Check 2 things off there. Paul George hurt again, lose the first game on the road to the Grizzlies. Now you got 4 games in a row that I think really are season definers. And it might sound a little bit premature to say that, as I don't even know if the homestand will extend into the beginning of December. It might be one of the first 2 days, but you could be looking at a completely lost season. The one encouraging thing you touched on it a little bit, like Joel looked a little bit more like himself on the offensive end. He had a few kind of impressive performances out on the perimeter defending, forcing a shot clock violation on Luke Kennard. but still, he didn't look fully engaged 100% around the rim defensively. I didn't really see him challenging shots,
Yeah.
and that could be, another factor with the knee injury that he's not really trusting pushing off it right now. Uh, but for him to still be in there at the end, showing he was competing a little bit, I think the message got through to him. But at the end of the day, you're still going to need other players around Joel Embiid to step up, and that just hasn't been the case in a full, 48 minutes in a game yet this season.
Yeah, absolutely there. And as far as like the game as a whole, in general, this would kind of be a game to me that you chop up as a little bit of a shooting variance game. But guess what? When you're 2-11 to start off the season, you don't get that kind of grace. And ultimately, like the numbers did settle a little bit better than it felt throughout the length of the overall game. With the game as a whole, the Sixers shot 11 of 33 from beyond the arc. 33.3% there. The Grizzlies 19 of 43, 44.2% there. So still an 11% better shooting percentage from beyond the 3-point arc, but it was something that was way wider gap through most of that game. So take that into account as well. But like I mentioned, you don't get that kind of good grace when you start off 2-11. You've ruled out any sort of wiggle room or excuses that you have for it yourself. And where I kind of have a hard time is, how do you fix things from here? The season's going on, whether the Sixers want it to or not. There will be 82 games of NBA basketball played, regardless of who's on the floor, who's healthy, or what version of this Sixers team looks like. Now, when kind of addressing this team as a whole, they literally can't do anything right now. The trade Joel Embiid talks, guess what? He's ineligible until this offseason because he signed this extension. All these other new signings cannot be traded till December 15th, which feels like forever away to this point. And, I just don't understand how they dig themselves out of it. That you have to find a way within this team internally to turn things around. And I really don't know what my level of confidence is that they have that in them. It felt like that should have been the turning point. That team meeting, that after that Miami Heat loss, which was another inexcusable loss when you have a team on the ropes like that, it just got worse, man. This was an embarrassing performance from start to finish. I don't know where they go from here. Ryan, talk me off the ledge a little bit.
Yeah, it's a bad thing because we've talked about this before, but you're kind of the eternal Sixers optimist where, you always kind of look at it at the glass half full that we can get out of this. We can make a run. We can build around Joel Embiid and be a championship team, but it really starting to sound like they're starting to get to you and even you're ready to call it quits. Even if they go 4-0 on this home stretch, you're still at 6-12. You need another 6 games just to get back to 500. Screw having a home game at this point. You're just hoping or a home series, one of the top 4 seeds. You're just hoping to get in. And, I said it in the last kind of segment, but Embiid had a little bit of that aggression, more so in the second half. I think the first half he was a little bit more mellow. But in the second half, I think we saw him kind of going balls to the wall a little bit more. And he's going to have to do that. He's
Yeah.
going to have to turn up. Really, if it depends how he wants to approach the rest of the season, if they want to go with this plan and the minutes restrictions or whatever, or if he just throws that out the window and says, you know what,
Have
I'm
to.
going to try and do my best to make it through as many games as possible. And in those other games, Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain, you guys are going to have to carry the way for there. But um, you still have those 2 young guys, budding stars in the league, I think. I can hang my hat on that at least for those 2 guys I know at least are going to show up and give effort each and every night. It just really matters what version of Embiid we get each and every night, and I think we're starting to see him get a little bit better than we have over the course of the first 3 games that he played. But still, I don't think near the player that he needs to be. But it also kind of goes back to the players around him and the coaching staff as well. Like we couldn't even make one single adjustment to defending the 3-point line tonight to allow the Grizzlies, who aren't even a 3-point shooting team, to shoot the lights out like that.
Yeah, it's embarrassing stuff. Now, the Joel conversation, to stick on this real quick, this load management plan, this quote unquote plan to get through the season, scrap it up and throw it out the window. Crumple that bad boy up and toss it, because there is no more room for error there. That I kind of laughed off the notion throughout the season of this team might not make the playoffs. That when you think about the NBA, kind of the grand scheme of things, how many teams get in there was no world to me that this team could have a floor this low where they're not even qualifying. Well, that's very much a reality now that you're 2-12 and got to dig yourself out of it. So while in theory this plan could have worked, that you get Joel Embiid to the healthiest, but getting him healthy at the most important part of the season is obviously the priority. Well, if we don't get to the most important important part of the season, none of it matters to this point. So any talks of the load management stuff, he better be playing back-to-backs. He better be playing on a night-to-night. And by the way, he will get hurt at some point. Even look at tonight that he's limping off with a knee injury. He got smashed in the face by Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, it's probably going to happen. This isn't going to last here, but you got to go down swinging to an extent. So I need them to empty the clip here. I can't leave anything unanswered. This has to be like a balls-to-the-walls effort from every single night from here on out. And if we don't see that, then we should really start having the blow-it-up conversations, because this is the core. Like, as much as we want to talk about the trade rumors, and yes, they could make another move to add another key piece to this, but you've made your investment. Paul George has a 4-year contract. Joel Embiid has signed a 3-year extension. He's on the books for 5 more seasons here. You gave Tyrese Maxey max contract. You gave Caleb Martin a 4-year deal. This is the team, so they have to find a way to work through things here. So the reality is we're buckled up for a long season, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be a fun one for this Sixers team. So we'll see how things go from here. Any final thoughts from you, Ryan, before we sign off here?
Need a 4-game win streak on this homestand. I think that's really pivotal, and especially to at least get the fan base back and kind of engaged. Like, I think I'm going to the game on Friday night. Tickets are as cheap as $12 right now in some of the markets. So that shows, I think, how little interest there is right now within the organization. So something needs to change, and something needs to change quickly. And it only can start with one win at a time. You're not going to be able to get 5, 6 wins in one kind of swing at the bat. You have to kind of chop away at this and just dig yourself out. And that's the problem you run into when you get yourself into a 10-game under 500 hole, only 14 games into the season.
Yep, this is an absolute disaster start to the season, one I truly did not think could get this bad, but here we are. So we'll see how things go from here. I do really feel that if they do not turn things around in this homestand, it is stick a fork in this season and it is over. I did not think that remotely we would be in this place or that it was even possible, but nonetheless, that's the situation. So we'll see how things go from here. Regardless of what goes down, me and Ryan are going to be here chopping it up on Sixers Digest. So let it rip in the comments, people, please. The Sixers deserve no mercy at this point in time, so let me know what you got on your mind below. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video, and hopefully we'll be back in a little bit higher spirits at some point in the future, but I am not feeling particularly optimistic. Appreciate each and one of you guys tuning in again. Talk to you next time. Peace.